Hi, Denise Dryden here from Whitefish, Montana, and I'm on Facebook Live, and it's raining outside. It's raining outside, and I live in a tourist town, so it means that it's just like wall-to-wall people. So there's no opportunity to get on the road or drive somewhere or even set up an umbrella and talk to you from the first rain we've had in like 40 days. So we're going to do it from inside the office. So here we go. Today I want to talk about how to identify a teen that might be highly sensitive. And because this is the work that I do, almost primarily as helping the parents see their child who's struggling through a different lens, this is going to be one of my favorite topics to talk about today. Hi Kelly, I'm glad you're here watching this. So when I'm talking about a highly sensitive person, I'm referring to, here it is, The Highly Sensitive Person with Dr. Elaine Aron. And she wrote a book in 1997, and then she did a movie in 2016 to clarify. And, clarify, add facts, do it with Alanis Morissette, create some really beautiful ways of understanding sensitivity. And what I want to do is put it in perspective of what happens when you have a teen that is not it's not working for them. They're angry, they're upset, they're struggling in school. And this is, when you take a teen out of their house and you put them in a therapeutic program, or you take them to Wilderness, or you ask them to see a therapist, or you ask them to start working with tutors at school, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of struggle, but there's also some level of relief, especially if it's carefully targeted at what's going on, right? So when we're talking about the highly sensitive, I've got some notes because I want to really go through this very carefully with you today. 20% of the population on this planet is highly sensitive. That means that 1 out of every 5, at a minimum, is a highly sensitive. Now, in order to be a highly sensitive person, it means that your depth of processing is really exaggerated, it's really accelerated, it's really open, and it's gathering information. So it means that you're neurologically fine-tuned to take in as many as 17 different things at one time. It's highly reactive to outside stimuli. It is a high state of arousal or reactivity. It means that cortisol is kind of going through the body, and it can activate or relax based on environment, internal systems and external systems. It means that you have a very, very fine-tuned, observant child. And if the parents are aware of this, they can be the navigator or they can be the one who causes an enormous amount of trauma and pain, right? Doesn't that make sense? So if you can nurture and you can provide comfort and you can see that your child, you can be a peaceful human being and provide some sort of balance for this baby, or you can be nervous, like I was as a first-time mom, doubtful, fearful, alone. My husband traveled a lot. And so there were all of these pieces that if I got nervous, my baby got nervous. And she would react to the kind of things that I did. And so knowing that there's always a cause and effect, that parents and children are in this kind of partnership and they're going to do this dance. So are you an aware partner, or are you a partner who has never even considered something like this? That's why I'm here, is let's consider something beyond anything that you would have imagined before. So if you're unaware and you keep providing activation, it's something that we can do as a parent to calm it down. If you're unaware or even aware and your child is still activated, it can be really frustrating to have a highly sensitive child that is, let's see, what were some of the words? Heart pounding, trembling, blushing, hand shaking, foggy thinking, stomach clenching, muscles tensing, hands perspiring. It can look like shyness. It can look like anxiousness. It can look like fearfulness. It can look like timidity, like, oh, I'm not sure I want to go do that. It can look like distress. And so anytime that the sensory system is activated, aroused, triggered, the child it could be from clothes, it could be from food, it could be from temperature in the room, it could be from, your own anxiety. It could be from global anxiety. We don't even know at this point all of the specific ways that sensory is activated in a child or in a human being. It gets worse with pressure, and sometimes that happens with overscheduling. Sometimes it happens with not enough sleep. Sometimes it happens with too much noise in the house. And it can also happen when they're inside one sensory environment too much and they don't get a chance to sort of get to know the outer perspective, the outer world. And then there's this other piece, which is when we start to look at, like, I'm really fortunate. I get to work with families that have an entire psychoeducational testing system done. So I get to read the 35-page report on IQ, on anxiety, on ADHD, on executive functioning, on all of those pieces. So there's some things that I started to put together that make sense. So one of the things is that when the IQ is scattered, and there's a 20-point difference between maybe, say, the verbal and the processing, it usually, not always, but usually is accompanied by low processing skills, which makes sense to me. It's like the body wants to slow the processing down so that it can take in all of this data that it's recording and seeing all the time. According to Elaine Aron, it's like 17 different facets of information are coming in and stimulating the body at all times, which makes them observant. It makes them wise. And as I've mentioned, I think I've done sensitivity a couple times here, it makes them really aware. So they're good therapists, they're good teachers, they're good counselors, they're good mentors. They used to be the wise men and women that they would bring in for counsel when they didn't know what to do. Go get someone who's really aware of much more than I can see or hear and have them counsel me on what I need to do. Doesn't that make sense? So sensitives are this wonderful gift, and they're highly frustrating as parents to raise, especially if you don't know that it's genetic and that one or both of you is going to be sensitive as well. And like myself, this was all new material, and about 2 years ago started to put it together and go, oh, that's what happens to me. I get it now. And so I've been reframing context from kindergarten through now and putting it into a different terminology, a different way of seeing it, and it's been an interesting journey. So sensitives can be introverts or they can be extroverts. They can be sensation-seeking. I'm an extroverted, sensation-seeking sensitive, which means that no one would ever, in any way, shape, or form, consider me to be a highly sensitive, outside of the fact that I'm incredibly observant and I have this inner wisdom of putting pieces together. I can put steps together way ahead and sort of anticipate what that might look like. And then I thought, well, don't all the rest of you guys do that? And I think that's the biggest issue to address with a teen, is that a child growing up in various stages doesn't know that they're different. They don't know that other people, maybe that the other 4 out of 5, don't process information the same way. They don't have that huge depth of processing. They can be male or female from any part of the country, and any part of the country, any part of the world. So there's no like sort of segregated or attraction area for sensitives. It's straight across the board. 1 out of 5 human beings on our planet is sensitive. So what I wanted to talk about is that when we're talking about cortisol input into the body, arousal, sensitive stimuli, right? If it's really easy for this to go undetected, and we can miss it, right? We can miss it because if we're in a nurturing environment, we have parents that are attentive and they pay attention. If we have a stabilized sensitive, and if they go to preschool and kindergarten and elementary school with all of their friends, they walk to school, you know, it's sort of a nice, balanced, easygoing, lot of love, lot of attention environment. It can go undetected until middle school or high school, because when we go from a single teacher with a classroom full of kids who, you know, kind of take care of each other, and there's a security. I know how to play sports with these kids. I know the moms. I know the sleepovers. Nothing's unfamiliar to me. When you add a middle school with 5, 6, 7 teachers, a 45-minute to hour schedule, or a block with the teacher that they don't know, they don't like, they're reacting, they're being aroused or stimulated by some negative personality in a teacher, or too many kids in the class, or an argumentative student, all of it starts to, all of a sudden, they can't handle the world that they're in. Doesn't that make sense? So they get over-aroused, they get overstimulated, and they start freaking out. So it might be a transition to middle school. It might be a move from one town to another, or one state to another. And the parents are kind of surprised sometimes, like, well, they were doing really well in Texas, and now that we live in California, they're not transitioning really well. And it's like, well, let's consider sensitivity as being an issue. So one of the things I do with my families, I don't know if you can see this very well, it's a bubble map. And what we do is we play on the phone. And so a sensitive can be, and I'm just going to go through this, intelligent, bright. They could be good at cooking, good at soccer. They could be creative, empathic. They could have a great sense of humor, witty, dry, or just jovial and fun to be around. They can love, like we said, athletics. They can be adventuresome. They can be curious, because they're thinking 2 and 3, 10 steps ahead. And so sometimes sports is easy. It's effortless. It's classrooms that don't work out very well, right? Or, you know, they're passionate. So it's photography, cooking, music, animals, you know, all of, you know, relationships, all of those things that are ooey gooey and juicy, as long as they support you. You know, these are kind of things that sensitives can do when they're balanced. They're critical thinkers. They're sort of quantum. They can expand and go at things from a lot of different angles. And they have a good memory. And let's see what else. I think that's it. So when you take this kind of kiddo from birth, and this could happen as early as like the first day that they're born, all the way until something starts to trigger them, they have a low processing. So sometimes they need more time. So it can look, or it can even have learning disabilities. So low processing, weak executive functioning skills. They dislike pressure. They drop out of sports when it stops becoming interesting to me, or when the coaches expect too much, or the parents expect too much. ADHD. They are very inattentive, jumpy, impulsive. They cannot hold a focus if something's going on in the classroom that is distracting or overstimulating. They can be anxious. They can isolate. They can get really angry and oppositional. They can be oppositional to mom or oppositional to dad, especially if they think that that person is not supporting them or doesn't see them. They can be oppositional to the whole family system and totally normal outside, where they know how to manage that. It's where they just don't know what to do. They can isolate and sink into video gaming. They can have school failure or school refusal. They can be depressed. They can self-medicate with weed. Seems to be the most common thing. If they're going to self-medicate, it's usually going to be weed. Then it's going to be alcohol, and occasionally it's going to be prescription drug experimentation, or even psychedelics. They're unhappy. They're shattered. They're angry at the world. They steal from their parents. They lie. And they're sort of out of sync with themselves. When we can understand that they're in a constant state of over-arousal, overstimulation, and that they're in an environment that doesn't see them and doesn't understand them, especially a high-pressured, you know, like a private school that really stresses academics, or an AP program, because they're really bright and intelligent, right? But their processing speed is much slower. They don't track the homework assignments the same way. So all of this starts to sort of build into a horrendous storm that parents have to deal with when they're teens. So this is what I do, is I help you sort of look at it from a different way, and then I help get you balanced. And then start to approach tools with your child and your spouse and your world. So if that's something you're interested in, ask me. I'm Denise Dryden. You can find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com, and have a fabulous Sunday. Take care.